Hi, I'm Jim DiPeso with a group called Republicans for Environmental Protection, which means I am the living fossil. Okay? Like coelacanths, you know, that fish that the scientists thought had been extinct for billions of years, and they hauled one up out of the Indian Ocean, said, wow, they're still around. Well, I'm the coelacanth. I'm going to start with a lesson learned. I'll take a quick detour to give you a little bit of a history lesson, then get on the main on-ramp for my conclusion. And my lesson learned is, when it comes to policy, don't put all your eggs in one basket. We once thought that cap and trade was the cat's pajamas, that it was the only politically viable way to put a price on carbon, which we think is the single most important thing we need to do to straighten out the energy and climate mess that we're in. Well, along came the Waxman-Markey legislation, and it seemed like a good idea at the time, but by the time it had blown up to 1,400 or more pages that nobody could explain in plain English in under 30 minutes, what you did was create a target-rich environment for every special interest, ideological extremist, and scientific illiterate camped along the Potomac River fighting to maintain the status quo. That's when we started taking a serious look at alternatives, like the carbon tax that we're talking about here today. Let me detour, though, quickly. Quick history lesson. Cap and trade is an idea that does have some Republican roots. As you might recall, it was folded into the Clean Air Act amendments of 1990 to deal with acid rain. That language was the outgrowth of some work, policy work that started during the latter half of the Reagan administration in the 1980s. So it's not an inherently bad idea that we should just throw off the table forever. It's just that circumstances and politics have combined to warrant giving alternatives a close look. One other thing to keep in mind, price on carbon is not a magic bullet. As Jim Lars said, there are market barriers to acquiring efficiency and other resources. We are going to need to do some other things like fuel efficiency standards. Now, when we first started thinking about cap and trade alternatives, we took a look at Jim Hansen's idea. Jim Hansen is one of America's leading climate scientists, and his one-page idea is fee and dividend. Require all sources of carbon to pay a fee upon their entry into the economy, and send all the revenues to the taxpayers as a dividend check, and that's about it. Now, Jim Hansen's approach exemplifies principles that we think any carbon tax proposal should follow. One, keep it simple and transparent. No more 1,400-page War and Peace novels. If you can't explain it on an elevator ride from the parking garage to the 15th floor, it's too complicated. Number two, make sure that you communicate that market forces work, and market forces work better when they tell the whole truth about the costs of carbon-based energy sources. Emphasize the idea that people would be free to make their own choices. If you want to go ahead and use carbon with abandon, you'd be free to do so, knowing up front that you would pay at least some of the social costs. Those who heed the market signal and change some of their purchasing decisions could avoid some of those costs. As some of the modeling has shown, some folks might even come out ahead when you count their change in energy habits and their rebate or dividend check or tax reduction. Don't use the revenues to grow the size of government. Like it or not, people don't want to give more money to the government until such time as the government has earned back public trust. If voters in this state are unwilling to pay a penny or two tax on tooth-rotting sugar water, they are not going to back a carbon tax if they think it's going to go down some black hole. So give it all back, either as dividend checks or as compensating tax reductions. Now, there's pros and cons to both approaches. Tax reductions. The Resources for the Future is an independent think tank in DC. They've done some recent studies, and they determined that a compensating tax reduction would actually yield lower costs per ton of carbon reduced than sending back the dividend check. So in terms of sound economics, the compensating tax reduction might be the better way to go. The fellow who works for Senator Cantwell raised a very good point, though. The dividend approach could be very effective in building political support. Got 1 minute. It will create an expectation of getting that check in the mail. Alaskans love their PFD, the Permanent Fund Dividend. My daughter lives in Anchorage. She goes to UAA. She got $1,300 back last year, and she was very pleased to report to me that she was able to use that $1,300 to buy 2 or 3 textbooks for her next semester. Those of you who are going to college know exactly what I'm talking about. So that's it. If you follow the Jim Hansen principles, keep it simple, keep it transparent, keep it market-based, don't enlarge government, tell them, make sure individuals know that they can still make their own energy choices, Most important, we are taking a better safe than sorry approach when it comes to keeping heat-trapping gases out of the atmosphere and trying to reduce our dependence on oil. Thank you very much.
I want to work all of you into the conversation here, but so be prepared to ask questions. Just raise your hand, I'll point to you. But I want to come back to Will. You didn't say much at the beginning here, but after hearing all of this, from your perspective, you want to weigh in a bit more? Yeah. And grab the microphone, please.
Well, I got to say that as speaking for labor is really difficult, as you might imagine. I mean, we're everything from grocery clerks to social workers to coal miners to pulp and paper workers. To say that there is some concern about cap and trade and or carbon pricing, that's putting it mildly. U.S. labor has been getting beat up since the steel workers and the forestry, and so there's an inherent distrust of anything new coming down. Now, I sat on the climate advisory team for Governor Gregoire and several other committees, and as we were talking about this, I think that most people, most labor folks do believe that something has to be done. But we're losing jobs at a record pace. I mean, it's coupled with bad economy, but I mean, even before the economy went bad 2 years ago, we had been losing jobs forever. So anything that comes along, we're looking at it with a certain amount of suspicion. We keep being told that, you know, it's not going to affect us, and that if it does, there's going to be transition. That's what I work with every single day is transition. I'm here telling you it's not equitable transition. You take our industry, pulp and paper is my background as well. I was a power recovery operator, ran turbines and boilers. Back in the 80s, we were making $25 an hour. We're being offered jobs now, $12 an hour. So we have that vicious cycle of racing to the bottom, and especially in the Northwest here. And so it's really hard for anybody to back the policy unless we know everything about it. And what we're really looking for is a larger industrial policy, something that has remedies when we are not on a level playing field.